Alright guys, factoring day 2, completely notes. The first rule of factoring is always see if you can factor out a GCF, okay? Meaning that there's something that you can take out that they all have in common. So I just wanted to go ahead and put on the page again of the notes that we did last class, because we're basically doing the exact same thing, okay? I know that we are going to slightly change, though, our table, right? So we're going to change our table idea to using that X that we did in class, okay? So here. So number 1, let's work this out. Notice the first thing I need to do is factor out the GCF first. So I'm going to write this out, 18x squared equals so on and so forth. Alright, so numbers that multiply to 18. Remember, you can always make a factor tree if you need to. Okay, 18, I know I can do 9 times 2, but then 9 breaks down to 3 times 3. Those are my 3 prime numbers, so that's what I have here. 3 times 3 times 2. Okay, x squared, x. Notice if you need to do the factor tree, then use it, okay? That's what it's there for. 33, I know I'm going to have 3 times 11. Those are both prime. I have 1x. 30, 3 times 10, but 10 is going to be 2 times 5. So let's see what we get. What do they have all in common? I notice that they all have the number 3. So what you need to do is imagine that you cover up, okay, that, and you look at one row, okay, only look at one row to figure out what the GCF is. So the GCF equals 3, because that's the only thing that we have. So let's factor it out. So 3 goes out. Now to fill in our parentheses. Remember, what goes in the parentheses is everything we did not circle. So I didn't circle 3 times 2, which is 6, x squared, plus, get that from the problem, plus 11x minus 10. All right, now we're going to do what we did last class. So first thing I'm going to set up is I'm going to write that that's my A, that's my B, that's my C. Here goes that X. Remember, we want A times C on top would add up to B on the bottom. So A times C is 6 times negative 10, which gives us negative 60. My B value is 11. So what numbers could we use? We can use negative 4 and positive 15, okay? 15 plus negative 4 gives us positive 11, and they multiply to negative 60. So remember, now we do our parentheses. X goes in front, and I'm going to use those two numbers, plus 15 minus 4. Now we take our lead coefficient, which is A. Remember, A is always our lead coefficient, which is the number 6, and I divide my numbers by 6. Let's reduce, see what we get. So we get x, 15 divided by 6 gives us positive 5 over 2. And then on the other side we get x minus 2 over 3. Now remember the rule. You take, if it's still a fraction, you take the denominator and you move it to the front. You take the denominator and you move it to the front. So our answer is 2x plus 5. 3x minus 2. But remember how we took out a GCF? So when I write my final answer, okay, which I'll write here at the top, okay, the final answer, I have to make sure that I remember to bring that GCF and include it, okay? And my parentheses are 2x plus 5, 3x minus 2. So this whole thing right here is our answer. Same thing here, let's factor out our GCF. So I have 20x cubed. Alright, so let's break these down. 20 I can break down to 2 times 5 times 2, and x to the third power is 3 x's. 80, I might need to make a factor tree to help me out with 80. Okay, so if I do 80, I know I got 8 times 10. Well, 8 divides to 4 times 2. 4 is 2 times 2. 10 also can be reduced to 2 times 5. So notice these are all my prime numbers, 2, 2, 2, 2, and 5. So 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 5, x squared, x. 35, I have 5 times 7 and an x. So what do they all have in common? They have a 5 and an x. Now remember here, this is where you're going to cover everything up and only look at one row to write our answer, and the GCF is 5x. So let's rewrite our new problem now. 5x goes on the outside. I'm going to have a plus and a plus on the inside, and we have everything we didn't circle, which is 4x squared. In the middle term, it is a 16x, and the last term, it is just 7. Okay, so now we follow our rules with what we did before. There's my A, there's my B, there's my C, there's my X. I got A times C on the top, add up to B on the bottom. 4 times 7 gives me 28, A times C. I need it to add up to 16. Two numbers that do that are 2 times 14. So I just figured out what my parentheses are. I'm using the letter X in this case, so X is what I use for my letter here. I'm going to have X plus 2, X plus 14. Remember now, you look for A, which is your lead coefficient, and in this case is 4. I'm going to divide both of those numbers by 4. So now let's look to reduce. X plus 1/2, x plus 7 over 2. Remember, if you still have a fraction, you take the denominator and you move it out to the front. Take the denominator and move it out to the front. So our final answer is 2x plus 1 times 2x plus 7. Now remember, because we factored out a GCF, when I write the final answer, we have to make sure that we include it. So 5x goes on the outside, and then I have my two parentheses, which is 2x plus 1 times 2x plus 7. So that would be our final answer. So let's try another one here. First thing I need to do is break them down and see, do they have a GCF? So notice here I went ahead and broke down 2v squared, 2 times 1, vv. 12, I can break that down to 2 times 3 times 2 and 1v. And 10 breaks down to 2 times 5. What do they all have in common? Okay, remember, you just look at one row to figure out what our GCF is, and our GCF in this case is just the number 2. So let's do our rewrite. 2 goes on the outside of the parentheses. I have a minus and a plus. That's from the original problem. What did we not circle? I have a v squared first, a 2 times 3, 6v, and finally a 5. Now I'm going to label my A, which technically would be the number 1, B, negative 6, C, positive 5. Here's my little X. A times C goes at the top, add up to B down at the bottom. A times C gives us 5, and my B is a negative 6. So what two numbers could we use? Negative 5 times negative 1 is positive 5, and negative 5 plus negative 1 is negative 6. So now I can write my two parentheses. Notice this time I'm using the letter V, not X. And I have a minus 5 and a minus 1. Now we find what our lead coefficient is, which is A. Remember, A is always our lead coefficient, which is the number 1. Now anytime it's really number 1, it doesn't make sense for us to have to do this, because if you notice, it's going to reduce to the exact same thing. But we're not done because we took out a GCF. So because we took out a GCF, remember, in our final answer, our GCF was 2, so I have to put it on the outside of those parentheses and keep what's on the inside the same. So that would be the final answer for this problem. Same concept. Let's go ahead and break it down and see, do they have a GCF? So notice I broke down 4y to the third to 2 times 2, y. 14y squared would be broken down to 2 times 7 y, and 6y would be broken down to 2 times 3y. What do they all have in common? The number 2 and a y. Remember, only focus on one row to write what our GCF is. And I know that my GCF is 2y. Well, let's rewrite now with our parentheses. I'm going to have 2 plus signs because that's in the problem. And we're going to mark everything that we did not circle. So let's see what we get. First time it's 2y squared. In the middle it's 7y. And at the end, the last term, what we didn't circle was a 3. Alright, I'm going to draw my little X, but I need to label A, B, and C. Remember, on top goes A times C, add up to B. A times C, 2 times 3 gives us 6, and then our B is 7. Two numbers, multiply to 6, add to 7. I think it's 6 times 1, yes. So now let's write our parentheses. Pay attention, what letter is this? It is a Y. And it'll be y plus 6, y plus 1. Then we take our lead coefficient, which we know by now is our a value, and it's 2. And I'm going to divide it by 2. What I notice is, in the first one, when I reduce 6 divided by 2, we get y plus 3. And on the second one, I can't reduce 1 divided by 2, but I know my rule is that this denominator has to go out in front, so it becomes 2y plus 1. Now don't forget, we took out our GCF, so in our final answer, we make sure that we put that GCF outside of the parentheses. Y plus 3, 2y plus 1. So that would be our final answer. Alright, notice this one, same idea, let's find the GCF. Now, if these are numbers are pretty big, like 24 is a pretty big number, and for sure 150 is a big number, then you might want to make sure that you draw out a factor tree to help you break this down. So let's see what our factors would be for 24. I'm going to start off with 3 times 8. I know 8 can break down to 4 times 2, and 4 breaks down to 2 times 2. So for 24, I'm going to have 3 times 2 times 2 times 2, K, because there's 2 K's. Now 150. 2 numbers multiply 150, 10 times 15. Remember, you can always check to make sure. Okay, get 150. Now 10 breaks down to 5 times 2. 15 breaks down to 3 times 5. All right, well that's it. So 5 times 2 times 3 times 5. Let's see what numbers we have in common. I noticed that we have a number 2 in common and the number 3 in common. So remember, for this part, for our GCF, only focus on one row. What did we circle? 3 and a 2. So therefore, the GCF is going to be 3 times 2, which is 6. Okay, so 6 goes on the outside of my parentheses. And let's see what we get on the inside of our parentheses. I'm going to have a minus sign in between. We have 4k squared and 5 times 5, 25. Alright, so now let's work this out. I know that's my A. Ooh, I notice I don't have a BX, so there is no B. So what does that tell me that B equals? Gotta be 0. And I do have a C, that's negative 25. So let me draw my little X. A times C goes on top, add up to B. A times C is 4 times negative 25, which is negative 100. And B is 0. So basically, anytime B is 0, that tells me that these two numbers have got to be the exact same numbers, but one's positive and one's negative. Well, what numbers are those? 10. 10 times negative 10 is negative 100, and 10 plus negative 10 does give us 0. So we just figured out what goes in our parentheses. Pay attention, the letter is K. Plus 10, minus 10. Look for our lead coefficient, which is A, which is the number 4. So I'm going to divide by 4. Notice those do reduce to the This one is positive 5 over 2. This one reduces to negative 5 over 2. We take that denominator and we move it to the front of our letter. So really we end up with 2k plus 5 times 2k minus 5. But don't forget, our final answer, we have to make sure that we take that GCF, which was the number 6, put it on the outside of our parentheses, and rewrite this. 2k plus 5, 2k minus 5. So this would be our final answer with the GCF included. I want you guys to try this one on your own. Okay, should be fairly simple. Hint, hint. Make sure that you look for the GCF first. So see if they have a GCF. All right, if they don't have a GCF, then you don't worry about that part and you just go straight to labeling A, B, and C. Now, I can already tell you that this probably is not going to have a B, so therefore that B value is going to be 0. So make sure you pause and work this out. If the area of a rectangle is 4x squared plus 2x minus 6 and the length is 2x plus 3, then what is the width? Just to kind of go back over it, when we have a box, there's a few ingredients that you should know. In this first box, it's typically always our ax squared. In this box, we usually have the bx and the bx because those combine. And in the last box, you have your plus c. So notice here in this equation, they give us some of that information. So I know that in this first box, I can put the 4x squared. And in this last box, I can put the negative 6. Now, I can't put a 2x here because I don't know what numbers we use to add up to 2x. Because notice that implies that it's both of those boxes. Now, another piece of, I'm putting my multiplication down in the corner. Another piece of information they gave me is they actually gave me one of the outsides, or one of my sides, okay, to figure this out. So I'm just going to write that there. Now, this is where I can work backwards and figure out. 2x times what number would give us 4x squared? Well, 2x times 2x will give you 4x squared. And finally, 3 times what number will give us negative 6? I think it's going to be negative 2. So the answer to the question is that the width equals 2x minus 2. So notice this is pretty much same thing as what we did last class, just a little bit more advanced with taking out a GCF if it's possible.